The old radio abbreviation DX actually means distance, but in ham radio we use it to refer to amateurs outside our home country, as well as to working and confirming contacts with them. Have you worked any DX yet? Let's talk about how. Welcome to Ask Dave, episode 47. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here to talk about working DX. One of the fundamental purposes of the amateur radio service, as coded in FCC regulations, is to promote international goodwill. Hams around the world, regardless of their country of origin, are members of the worldwide amateur radio fraternity. And as we work stations in other countries, we strengthen those bonds. Now, mind you, I'm not a rabid DXer. Rather, I'm what you would call a casual DXer, working DX stations when I can. I've had DX QSOs with stations around the world, some with very interesting stories to tell. As a newly upgraded general, back in 1976, I had just walked back into my room after a shower and flipped on the radio. I heard KJ6CF calling CQ on 7253 kilohertz on lower sideband. So, shedding my robe, I grabbed the mic. It turned out to be Duncan, an Air Force airman about my age, speaking from Johnston Island. We chatted for 10 minutes. I had no idea that Johnston Island would be considered DX, and in fact had no idea where it even was, but quickly learned as soon as our genial chit-chat was replaced by a roar of other stations wanting Johnston Island in their log. And nowadays, with the island left to go back to nature, there are no inhabitants and thus no DX. I suppose we should define what a country is. For amateur radio DX purposes, a country, or more accurately, one of the nearly 350 entities on a list maintained by the ARRL, called the DXCC Country List. Johnston Island, though administered by the United States, is far enough away from other U.S. possessions that it's listed as a separate entity, as are Alaska, Hawaii, the U.S. mainland, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and so on. Oh, and the DXCC is the DX Century Club, which you can join after you have confirmed contacts with over 100 DXCC entities. Some of the entities, such as Johnston Island, are normally uninhabited or have no radio amateurs, so from time to time, DXpeditions are undertaken to put these faraway locations on the air. The expeditions range from the huge, costing upwards of $1 million for the event, down to the occasional, such as E51AME, located in the North Cook Islands, a one-man expedition by someone who frequents the islands. I worked him a few days ago. Again, an example of hearing the CQ and responding. Now, there are lots of articles and videos that discuss advanced DXing, trying to teach you how to get that 300th country. That's fairly advanced stuff. I'd like to talk about getting that first 100, which is much more straightforward. When we work DX, as we happen upon it, we are working so-called casual DXing, and that's just fine. Both my contacts with Johnston Island and the North Cook Islands are examples of casual DXing. As you operate, you'll do the same. It's quite satisfying to know that your signal is unhindered by national boundaries. For those who live in the United States, perhaps the first DX country you'll work will be Canada. If you live on the East Coast, perhaps Europe. My very first DX from my Southern California novice station was Mexico, followed by Hawaii, American Samoa, Japan, Colombia, and the Cayman Islands, all in Morse code with my little Heathkit HW16. As a new ham, I was dazzled by the power of my tiny signal spanning the globe. It seemed so much like magic to me then. It still does. Let's talk about how to work DX. You need a few things. The most important part of a good station for working DX is operator skill, and that comes through practice. You can read about it all you want, and that is a good idea, but when you give these techniques a try, you'll learn what works for you and what doesn't. If you're using single sideband, check your owner's manual regarding how to set up speech processing properly. It can help your signal have more punch. Go over the details in your station, cleaning up any corrosion on the antenna, your cable connections, and so forth. Now, there's sloppy amateur practices and best amateur practices. I urge you to adopt and not vary from best practice. When you hear a faraway DX station, reply to their CQ or QRZ with your call sign phonetically just once. For example, I would say Kilo Echo Zero Oscar Golf. That's all. If the DX station hears you, they will give you your call sign, then your signal report, which is nearly always 5-9. If you're sure he got your call right, then you simply say QSL, which means confirming you understood his signal report. You're 5-9 in Colorado, 73. If he didn't hear your call correctly, you will need to restate it until he does. You may have to use alternate phonetics. For example, I might say King Edward Zero, Ocean, Germany. Sometimes DX stations find these easier to understand. Remember, the DX station might not speak a word of English. After you're finished transmitting, the DX station will likely call QRZ, which means who's calling me. Your QSO is finished, so record it in your logbook. From time to time, the DX station will want to chat a bit, especially if he or she knows English well. Note, a bit. Don't give lengthy descriptions of your weather, your station, and your latest gallbladder surgery, but keep it snappy, like, name is Dave, running 100 watts to a vertical. How copy? Let the DX station determine when the chit-chat is enough. Why are DX contacts so short? Well, there are many hams in Europe, North America, and Japan, but there really aren't so many in other places. So there are many other hams wanting to work that same station. And the DX station often wants to give as many hams as possible a chance to work him or her. Now this brings up the pileup. The term comes from football, in which lots of players pile on top of each other trying to recover a fumble. That's just what it sounds like on the air. The DX station will hear a huge cacophonous roar and will try to pick out a call sign. Now here's where you need to listen. Does the DX station answer the first rapid-fire call sign sent? Or does he pick stations who say their phonetics more clearly? Or perhaps he picks the last station calling? Figure out what he's doing and be prepared to do likewise. Timing is everything. Out of all those stations, he picks only one. Now, I've been on the receiving end of pileups from time to time. Sometimes I can hear nothing but a roar, or perhaps I might hear a single letter. I might say, station with Juliet, go again. If the roar is unmanageable, which it was once when I operated a special event station in Alabama while I was in the Air Force, I say, okay, stations in call district 1, please call. I'd pick out one. Then I'd say, okay, stations in call district 2, please call. And I rotated through the 10 U.S. call sign districts. Please note that if your DX station is doing something like this, and you call out of turn, not only are you deviating from amateur best practice, but you're viewed unfavorably. Sometimes the DX station might work you to get you to go away, but more likely he will refuse to work you, even if your station is the only one on the band. Don't do this. Some stations work split, meaning they're listening on a different frequency from their transmit frequency. I found this to be less common than simply using a single frequency. If they say something like, I'm listening up 5, then get out your manual and figure out how to put your transmit frequency 5 kilohertz above your receive frequency. On some radios this is easy, and others less so, but all modern radios have this capability. I consider this a bit of an advanced technique, but there's no reason not to try. Note that when the other station says up 5, he could be tuning anywhere from 4 kHz to 10 kHz above his transmitting frequency. I hesitate a bit saying he. While it is true that the vast majority of hams are male, the other evening I heard a crisp female voice with a cultured English accent calling CQDX from the Falklands. I tried to get through the pileup, but failed, even with 500 watts to my vertical. Oh well, you can't break every pileup. Be persistent, but if after 5 or 10 minutes you haven't made it, you might want to look for other opportunities. In these days of low sunspot cycles, you'll probably find most DX on 40 meters all day and night and 20 meters during the day. There's something called gray line propagation, meaning if it's within an hour or so from your local sunrise or sunset, you can work stations a large distance away, particularly if it is also within an hour or so of their local sunrise or sunset. Remember that your local sunset may be someone else's sunrise. This map of the globe shows the twilight region extending around the Earth. As the seasons change, the gray line changes dramatically, so you may find these to be happy hunting grounds. Avid DXers have put together spotting networks. These list DX stations that contributors have heard. Perhaps one of the most popular is dxwatch.com. It provides a rolling list of the stations heard. Note that it also lists the station that heard the DX. If you see that Tanzania was heard in South Africa, it likely means hams in our country won't hear it, although you never know. Spotting networks can truly be handy. The absolute best time to work DX stations is during DX contests. Contesting is an art all in itself, but even dabbling in such contests can net you new DX stations. In the CQ Worldwide Phone Contest last October, during the few hours I was on the air, I worked Bonaire, Costa Rica, Canada, Cuba, Brazil, St. Kitts and Nevis, Hawaii, Japan, Guatemala, Finland, and Nicaragua. And I should count USA because that's a country in the DXCC list too. Some of these were ATNOs, or ATNO, meaning all-time new ones for me. I used 20 and 40 meters for these contacts, though during the contests all bands are used, and you might find stations on 15 and 10 meters too. Watch the contest calendar listing in QST for notice of upcoming contests up to a year out. Okay, now early on I used the word confirm as part of the description for the DXCC award. Confirm means that you have a QSL in some acceptable form. The two acceptable forms for DXCC are paper QSLs, meaning the original QSL card from the DX station, or Logbook of the World, sometimes called LOTW. Note that contacts from other electronic logs are not used toward DXCC. Many of the active DX stations use Logbook of the World, but those who jump in for contests may not. If that's the case, you'll want a paper QSL. QSLing DX stations is a whole nother subject, but I mention here the ARRL Outgoing QSL Bureau that, while slow, is often quite effective. You may need to QSL direct to the DX station or via a so-called QSL manager. This used to be quite difficult to keep track of, but the website qrz.com is a goldmine of information about DX hams. Look up the call on QRZ to see how the DX station likes to QSL. Sometimes the DX station is willing to QSL direct, but it wants you to pay for the postage. He will say something like, please include a green stamp. A green stamp is a US dollar bill. Given postage rates, it may take more than one. I had an interesting case last year. A Swedish ham, SM7DZI, chases U.S. counties. I live in Ouray County, which has very few hams. I might add as well, very few people. And he wanted Ouray County. So we set up a time to contact each other. We made the contact, and he sent me his QSL card and, as a courtesy, a green stamp. I thought that was nice, well, considering that postage back to Sweden, in fact, was more than that. Note that some countries forbid their citizens to hold U.S. currency, so be sure the station is willing to accept a green stamp. It will usually be listed on their QRZ.com page. Here are some interesting QSLs. This is my all-time favorite from an Austrian diplomat who was stationed in Zaire. This one from Swaziland is probably the farthest station I've ever worked, very nearly completely on the other side of the world from me. Here's one from a country that no longer exists, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia no longer exists either. And I have multiple cards from the now defunct USSR. If DX becomes especially interesting for you, you'll want to learn more. Many books have been written on the subject. One I found particularly useful several years ago was the DXCC Companion from the ARRL, unfortunately now out of print. Another book with good info is the Complete DXer, now in its third edition, available from the ARRL. My copy of the first edition is now 34 years old, but the advice is timeless. It goes into far more detail than this video does, that's for sure. Above all, when DXing, your most important virtue is patience. Do not give in to the temptation to call out of turn, and don't respond to others who are not following best practice. Don't tune up on the DX station's frequency. I hear that too much. Be the kind of ham that you'd like others to be. I hope this video spurs you on to try to find and work DX. It's a great way to expand your horizons and get the most from the hobby. Please click like and please subscribe. Check out the Ask Dave playlist and the tip jar. Don't judge a book by its cover. Leave a comment, ask a question. Until next time, 73.